It's nice to have something familiar. I think a lot of games are American-based.
It kind of makes you feel slightly nostalgic when you first start the trailer.
I found it very interesting and I'll be pleased to play it when they will finish.
We never set out to kind of make a video game or become an independent video game studio. James had kind of been thinking about some quite site-specific things anyway, about where he's from, and then it turns out that that's kind of where we're all from and how we all kind of grew up.
The story in Sovereign takes place in the suburbs of England. And the environment is designed to kind of emphasise the character's emotional state, specifically from the perspective of being a teenager.
It's a very narrative-driven game, and we're trying to introduce elements of magical realism to sort of drive the story and create sort of surreal aspects and scenes within it.
We want people to question that power that they often feel when they play first-person computer games by reversing the sort of power mechanic that's traditionally found in those kinds of games. The player will start off feeling more powerful than they end up.
The place that Sovereign is set is a fairly non-specific place.
It's just like a transitional space between the city and countryside. Sort of relates quite nicely to the transition of going from childhood to adulthood. It's like a nice metaphor for that kind of change.
Look at that bit.
So we're in Sidcup, which is actually where I grew up, but really today we're looking at some of the details that will really bring the authenticity of the scene. People's fences and back gardens, and how there's a lot of different personality sort of built into their sort of design choices.
It'd be quite good because at the moment it just kind of gets to the end and there's some houses.
And also when we're sort of thinking about different people's gardens in the game, we're sort of thinking about the people that live there and have those characters in mind when we're sort of putting together the back gardens.
The characters in the game are very relatable to people that I knew growing up, the sort of people who lived around the area, the sort of people we went to school with. So it's just about trying to recapture those memories and recreate those interesting people.
I'd hope that the people from this area find Sovereign to be a sort of sympathetic portrait and sort of realistic portrayal of what it could be like sort of growing up in an area like this that is often sort of not communicated or sort of explored in games or films.
I think that the story that we're trying to tell is from a position of like realism and of social realism.
Hey. Hi.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. Hi.
It was a kind of natural thing to approach you about this because we were always aware of your work when you started out with Vexed in the actual early 2000s. Probably around the time that Sovereign is set, you still understand that kind of culture and the youth culture of that time.
It's often you get the chance to kind of re-explore that time and place, all these particular kind of like sounds and what they meant to people at that time as well.
Sovereign is set 15, 20 years ago. I think it's important that the story ideas somehow refer back to a sort of current experience as well. Obviously the way that young people engage with this kind of interactive digital media is interesting to us.
We'll make that as like a 3D thing. So we're running a series of workshops at Somerset House with some students who are based all around London. They're sort of 16 to 19-year-olds. One of the sort of thought processes behind that is to, one, get feedback from people who are of a similar age to the protagonists that are in the game that we're making. But it's also kind of like feeding back to them and trying to get them to explore how to use, perhaps some of this technology to sort of widen their horizons a little bit and think a bit more critically or creatively about their environments.
Working on our own game sort of made me appreciate how much hard work goes into it rather than just seeing it as just a game, but it's somebody's like art piece as well.
I feel like I'll be able to hopefully like incorporate that in my own work.
He kept telling me to like make my own music videos and carry on doing that, and yeah, that's like inspirational for me.
I think with gaming or gaming tech, the rules haven't really been written yet and kind of everything's up for grabs, and I think The students seem to respond viscerally to that.
Personally, I think the future of gaming will be like virtual reality, because it's coming up in like the whole gaming scene right now, and it can only get better.
I think a lot more females will feel like, oh, it's not just the guys' thing, like to play games.
I'm very attached to the story of the game now. So I mean, I look at it, it's just something that feels like it should really be made and be shared with people. It just deserves to happen.